Hi there, and welcome to episode 3 of the AsianTalks podcast. Elizabeth Shim with you here. It's easy to dismiss North Korea as an isolated regime suffering from a serious food shortage. And while this stands true, this month's podcast focused on the country reveals that North Korea can be seen as multifaceted and even willing to work with foreigners outside its borders. Listen in as Simon Cockerell of Korea Tours and photographer Katharina Hesse discuss the North Korean culture they have experienced. Their answers will surprise you. Just because you're both on the ground in China, we're just curious, what has been the Chinese reaction to the death of Kim Jong-il in late December? And what's it like now? Has it been forgotten? And how do Chinese attitudes affect your outlook on North Korea? And Simon, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, the official papers in China all published the death of a friend, this sort of thing, and condolences to the people and the government of the DPRK. What you would expect at the passing of a head of state of a relatively friendly country. The internet, of course, the Chinese internet, more so than any other internet, is a den of jokes, memes, and slightly off-color humor. So mostly that was messing around, doctoring photos and that sort of thing. Normal online stuff, really. I think to most people, though, it was the reaction in China much like anywhere else, because it's not like people in China revered Kim Jong-il or anything like that. They knew that he'd had health problems, just like the rest of the world. So I don't think people in China were really reveling in his death, but at the same time, it wasn't, a great blow to them.
Great. Thank you, Simon. Also, a question for both of you. If North Korea reforms, do either of you foresee changes in Northeast China? And what is that region like, at least in the areas you have been to? And just exactly how tied is the region to North Korea?
It's mostly Korean people on either side of the river. People of the same background, just different passports, essentially. And until a few decades ago, that didn't mean anything. That was just a river separating two different groups of Korean people. Now it's a river between two different countries. We forget that, these Korean people in China, they've been there forever. This is a very long period of time. So the actual separation is two different countries.
So there were times, I think this whole area belonged to what's now considered North Korea. And in other times, also parts of what's considered North Korea nowadays was part of China. So all these people are basically, it's like one big ethnic group.
Yeah, these are, like you said, very much lines drawn on a map, not artificial lines, because obviously the North Korean-China border is defined by two rivers. But this isn't this wasn't the boundary between the Korean people and the Chinese people 5,000 years ago. These are sort of race myths that don't really fit with history. There's even a tiny Chinese minority population in North Korea. Their census of 2 or 3 years ago, nearly 4 years ago now, counted around 5,000 people of Chinese descent living in the country, not including embassy staff. Some of those people basically fled China to North Korea during the Cultural Revolution. Now seems like a slightly very weird thing to do. Who are just an ethnic minority.
No, I really didn't know about overseas Chinese. I guess it's not really technically overseas because it's right across a river, like you said. But right. There is an overseas Chinese community in North Korea, and that's
it's very small.
Also part of the whole mountain area, Changbaishan, which I think at one point is called Paektusan. It's both venerated by the Koreans, by the ethnic Koreans here in China, but then obviously also by the Koreans in North Korea. So they have quite a bit of things in common.
People in this part of the world do tend to have a great affinity for a good-looking mountain. The amount of songs about mountains and rivers, there's a lot of them. shall we say. So, yeah, there does, everyone tends to have their local great mountain. It's a popular thing to have. I almost feel bad because the part of England I'm from don't really have any mountains. I don't even have a popular local hill or anything. So, considering adopting Mount Pektu as my own, but apparently it's already taken.
What about in Germany, Katharina? Is there this reverence for mountains, or do you find it just amusing?
So far, I find it amusing. I'm from the north, which is very, very flat.
You have to stick to BMWs and Mercedes instead of mountains and rivers, really.
Maybe.
My last question is: have either of you, obviously yes, but have either of you tried North Korean food? And what is it like? And is it different from the South Korean food you've tried, or at least the Korean food in China?
Sure. Well, obviously, I've eaten North Korean food, hundreds and hundreds of times, with no exaggeration. So the food in North Korea that you're given as a tourist, I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about the food that the average person eats, because the average person in North Korea eats very basically, and usually not enough. Rice, some basic soup, meat very rarely. They basically eat whatever's grown in the area where they live. If you live on the coast, you probably eat a lot of fish. If you live on a fruit farm, you probably eat a lot of fruit. But the food that is given to tourists it is a bit more wide-ranging. It's rice, kimchi, cold noodles, bibimbap, barbecue, and so on. It's usually all right. It's not the kind of place you'd go for a culinary holiday, but people expect so little, and they're given something that's better than they expect, so they're generally pretty pleased with it. So I would say occasionally it's very good, and usually it's good enough. A lot of the North Korean restaurants in China, however, are really terrific. The skill levels of the chefs is very high. It's just that in China they have more access to better quality produce. And because they charge quite a lot, they can be a bit pricier than the normal Chinese Korean restaurants. So they can afford to buy in the good quality stuff. So that's the main difference. But if you really like Korean food, North Korean food can be very good. Some people, really Western people that we take to North Korea, they can struggle a bit with the kimchi and the fact that the noodles are cold and this sort of thing. Generally, people are willing to have a go at it, though. So I would find, North Korean food, I think it's fine. I think it's all right.
I don't know. I think I'm not really qualified to comment. I've had my North Korean food experiences by the border, where there's some North Korean restaurants. The food was totally excellent. There was lots of seafood, but obviously all for export. And I've had some North Korean experiences here in Beijing that was great too. Really nothing to complain.
All I can say for absolute certainty is this. North Korean soju is much worse than South Korean soju. It tastes, but North Korean beer is vastly better. North Korean beer is much better. So if the time actually does come for reunification, North Korea will be bringing that to the table. They'll be saying, look, guys, we know you like a good beer. We've got it. Let's negotiate. Wow. A lot of their microbreweries there are terrific. Their main beer in Pyongyang, the Taedonggang beer, brewed at a brewery that used to be my local brewery in the UK, but it went bust and the North Koreans bought it. That stuff's very good. That used to be sold in South Korea in limited quantities. But most of their microbrewed stuff is pretty terrific, actually.
So North Korea, on the culinary level and I guess on the beverage level as well, definitely has potential. For the more optimistic of us, we hope North Korea will open up more and it'll be a more, at least significantly friendlier place to travel.
Sure, absolutely. And it would be nice if the average person in North Korea could eat like the tourists do as well. Yeah, actually food has been the main issue I think for about almost all of the refugees I've photographed here. The first thing is always food. Why did you leave the country? Food, nothing to eat.
I also wanted to introduce you to each other, but I think you may have met before or at least have mutual acquaintances.
That's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll meet up before too long when, I guess our main mutual contact would be my boss, Nick, who Katharina knows very well. He's out of the country at the moment.
Where is Nick? Is he North Korea?
He's in Antwerp, another divided country. And, he's putting the finishing touches to our new movie, this North Korean romantic comedy.
Cool.
It will be done soon. We have been saying that for a year, but it really will be done soon.
So, Simon, is that an actual movie as opposed to a documentary? You had actors?
It's a dramatic film, a romantic comedy.
With North Korean actors or foreign actors?
All North Korean actors. Yeah, some famous ones as well. I mean, famous in North Korea.
Really?
And is this meant for like a North Korean audience or foreign audience?
It's made for both, really. I mean, in terms of business, you can't really make a movie for a North Korean audience and expect to make any money. I mean, if everyone in the country pays to go and see it, there's still nothing in it for you. It would be nice if they watched it, and every film made there has to be made according to the template laid out by Kim Jong-il in his book On the Art of Cinema. So it's trying to work within those parameters to make something a bit new and a bit more modern. So it has the look of a North Korean film, but it has this feel of, something a bit different. We hope, anyway. So it'd be nice for it to have an audience outside of North Korea. That would be ideal. But it is, a Korean language film. We don't expect it to be a colossal big hit. Just if people who are interested see it, I'd like to think there are enough people who would be interested to make it worthwhile. And it will be, for most people, the first North Korean film they've ever seen.
Could you briefly tell us what the film is about? I mean, just the plot line or anything that we could chew on?
Yeah, it's about a coal miner, a lady, who wants to become an acrobat and all the comedic situations that entails.
And again, this is relating to just everyday life in North Korea. I mean, we'll definitely see scenes of that throughout the film.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, everyday life as much as it can be presented. This will be everyday life with people who live in Pyongyang, which is entirely representative of the whole country. But yeah, the idea is to make it somewhat realistic. I mean, it is a romantic comedy after all, and it's a film, so people go with some suspension of disbelief. But yeah, it's supposed to be fairly true to life as much as possible.
Katharina, do you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah, I was wondering, how long has it taken you to get this approved?
Long time indeed. It's been years, yeah. It's gone through a lot of different rewrites because, Nick is the main artistic driving force behind this. This is Nick Bonham, my boss. And obviously the North Koreans, they know how to write films, their own films for their market. They know Kim Jong-il's book inside and out. Nick, perhaps not so much. So you write a film and then they say, well, look, you can't have this thematic element and you're supposed to include this other thematic element. This character doesn't exist in our society, whereas, you've forgotten about this. So it goes through a lot of rewrites until they're happy to make it. Because with the documentaries we made, we get the permission to film there, do the filming, and then take the film out. It's not shown to anyone there. They have no right of censorship or editing, no editorial control whatsoever. This film, though, is much more of a cooperation. So it must be made according to this template. But there's certain parts of the template that we're not that keen on including. We don't feel it's very valid for this film. So you try and include it in a different way, try and think around it.